This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 219 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. This one is all about seeing the Northern Lights. I decided that it is kind of Christmassy now. It's a few days before Christmas when this episode comes out, and the Northern Lights seem like, I don't know, nature's way to celebrate. This is my decision anyway, that I thought it was just the right time to have a lovely, fun episode about really interesting experiences of seeing the Northern Lights. So I've actually got 4 guests today because I had so many good stories and I couldn't bear to leave any of them out. So we'll get straight into it. And the first one is Justin Meneguzzi, and he told me about how he wanted to take his partner Sarah to see the Northern Lights. He knew that was something she really wanted to see, as did he. And Sarah had had a failed attempt to see them in Canada with a friend. And this is what he did about that.
Well, we decided together that we wanted to go to Europe and have a white Christmas together in Germany and in Northern Europe. And I knew that I was going to propose on that trip. And I thought, how amazing would it be? I'm a bit of a soft romantic like that. How amazing would it be if we finally saw the Northern Lights together and she got to have that dream and we could have that moment together, and that would be really nice kind of moments to propose if we get married. So that was the big plan. I went and had a ring made. I had the waves and loops of the Northern Lights kind of designed into the ring as well. And had the ring. We set off to Europe. All was going well, into a number of places beforehand. And then we arrived in Reykjavik, which is, the capital of Iceland. And we get there, it's absolutely pitch black. It gets dark around 3:30 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So by the time we got there, it was already nighttime, pretty much. And so we get to our hostel, and there's not really a whole lot you can do when it's already dark by that time.
That's so true.
We go for like a nature hike or something like that. You can just kind of wander around town and that's it. There's an app that you can use that tells you the likelihood of the Northern Lights appearing. It tells you the coverage. I can't remember what it is. It tells you the coverage of clouds. It tells you how intense the solar rays are, because the solar rays cause the lights to appear, and a bunch of other factors. And I remember saying it was like a relatively low to medium chance of seeing the lights that night. But we're pretty optimistic. You never know when they're going to pop up.
Low to medium is not nothing.
Exactly right. Especially when you talk to the locals, they kind of like take any chance you can get because they're so unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. So we decided to go down to the waterfront and just sit down there and see what happens. And so we walk down, and it's just kind of you're looking out to sea, basically. And there's this kind of rocky foreshore with they dumped all these boulders and rocks on it, kind of like a sea break. And so we're sitting there looking out, kind of waiting for something to happen. And then all of a sudden, this hazy green shape starts to appear. And because you're looking out into the darkness for so long, straining your eyes to try and find something, you don't know if you're just imagining it or if it's actually there. And Sarah said, I think there's something moving up there. And we realized we were there for hours, but over half an hour it got stronger and more intense, and you could see it kind of gently waving. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as intense as you see it in the photography, but it was there. And I was just kicking myself because I didn't have the ring on me.
Oh, no! Justin!
I was just like, you never know. Probably not going to turn up. I'll just leave it back at the hostel. So I didn't have the ring on me. And I was debating. I was sitting there and I was like, do I do it? Do I do it without the ring? No, you can't have a proposal without the ring. You need the ring. Then I thought, well, maybe I'll run back to the hostel and I'll get the ring, make up some kind of excuse for why I have to leave her there, or to make both of us leave. and come back. But then, you run the risk with doing that if you leave, it might disappear by the time.
Exactly. Very risky.
So I was just like, no, okay, we'll just sit here and enjoy the show. So didn't propose, sat there and enjoyed the show. And it was the start of our week-long trip in Iceland. And we were doing a specific Northern Lights focused tour.
Okay.
So we're going to the Northern Lights area. So I was like, I'll hedge my bets. And
You'll have another chance, surely.
Yeah, have another chance, surely. So that was beautiful. We had a chance to see it then. Sarah was rapt that she got to see the lights that night. But still, when we started our tour, the first night, no lights. Second night, no lights. Third night, no lights. And I started to realize that my moments to propose were kind of slipping through my fingers a bit. And I didn't have a plan B, because after that we were going to London and we were going home. So there was no real opportunity elsewhere within the itinerary to have a romantic proposal. So I was getting a bit desperate. And I got to the fifth day of the trip. And our leader told us that we were going to this special beach where basically there is a glacier that breaks up next to a river, and the chunks of ice fall into the water, and the water carries it to the beach, and then it breaks up on the beach, and it's black sand beach, and you've got giant chunks and small chunks of glacier that are just scattered across it, and it looks spectacular. And it's called Diamond Beach. And I was like, there we go.
Perfect.
Perfect. So we got to go to Diamond Beach, and I waited till our little group moved away from us, and then got down on one knee and proposed that way.
Beautiful.
So even though, it was kind of the best of both worlds. So we still saw the Northern Lights, still got the proposal in there, and so it all worked out well.
And Diamond Beach sounds like an appropriate place, so... Justin did tell me after that perhaps they might take a honeymoon trip to do some more chasing of a Northern Lights experience. But I think that this whole proposal thing worked out pretty well as it was. Now, my next guest today is Karen Emanuel, and she made me quite envious by telling me about not one but two different trips in which she got to see the Northern Lights.
One was when I went with my best friend to Iceland, and we took one of those trips. I think we saw it advertised on a billboard or something, cheap long weekend in Iceland, and we were like, looked at each other like, yeah, come on, let's do it. So you can do that from Europe.
Yeah.
So we did, and we were both desperate to see the Northern Lights, and so we booked on one of these big coach tours. And I think the first night we were going to go, it was cancelled because the weather was too bad, and maybe even the second. And it was the last night we were able to go. We finally got on the bus with loads and loads of tourists, all quite enjoying a drink. The bus was getting quite rowdy. My friend was leading the singing. She's not a shy wallflower. And I don't know, I mean, obviously you've never done this, but so what happens is there's people on radios all the way around trying to spot the lights, and they radio into the drivers, and the drivers try and chase them.
Ah.
And it was hours.
Oh, gosh.
I just remember it being hours and hours, and everyone's getting jollier and jollier.
Oh, it sounds messy.
And louder and louder. And then, but suddenly they found them, and we all kind of threw out the bus, and you've never heard such a loud, rowdy bunch of people just go quiet.
Oh, wow.
Because it was just, you just looked up. It was very, very short-lived, but you just looked up and were just, it's indescribable. Really is. So that was the first time. And then the second time, I'd decided I wanted to go and see polar bears. Obviously, there's a lot of very sort of negativity surrounding them, and how they might go extinct, and you see all these terrible pictures and everything. And I thought, well, I'd really, as a present to myself for a big birthday.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah, my husband and I went off to see them. And we were, I think it was just the first day that we'd arrived, and they'd said, oh, you might be able to see the Northern Lights. And they said that they'd wake you up if someone saw them, they'd get an alert and they'd come and wake you up. And the first night we seen them, I think we were the only ones that had decided, rather than to stay in the hotel or the lodgings, we decided to go out and explore the town and maybe have a drink before we went to bed. And literally kind of like turned around the corner, sort of looking for this bar, and just looked up in the sky, and there was this sheet.
Oh, wow.
It was absolutely ethereal. And we were both kind of like, whoa, is that really happening? It's kind of, I don't know, like not a spaceship landing, but, that sort of thing. It's just so intense and crazy. And we were like, we felt really special because we were the only people sort of in our group that had decided to be a bit naughty and go out to a bar.
Yes. And it paid off doubly.
Oh my gosh, did it? So that was remarkable. And we actually saw them quite a lot of times on that break. We just spent hours sort of trying to get snaps of them sort of every night whenever we saw them. It was it's just incredible. Incredible.
There's no such thing as an overdose of Northern Lights? Like, you were still amazed? I don't imagine so either, but just checking.
No.
You'd go again. So Justin didn't have a whole lot of luck seeing the Northern Lights, but Karen had, well, it sounds like a lot of luck to see them. Now, my next guest, Travis King, was somewhere in the middle of that with his Northern Lights experience.
So that night in Denali, so now I'm like pretty far north up in Alaska, like pretty high up there. And that night we stayed at a friend's that we'd made who was up in Denali at the time. And he went outside to like let his dog out and yelled back into the house, like, you guys got to get out here right now. So we just like stumbled out at midnight to watch his dog, try to find a place to go to the bathroom. And as soon as we got outside, it was just like, just wavy bands of green light in the sky. Totally just no mistaking that those are the Northern Lights. Like, my first thought was like, I'm so dumb for thinking I ever might have recently seen this. Like, this is so beyond, what I would have imagined it looks like in real life. And yeah, it was, one of those things where you and all your friends just stop talking. You're like, there's nothing we can say that's better than just looking at this in total silence right now. And we just stood there for like 15 minutes, just
how wonderful.
Watching this guy dance.
Oh, that's amazing. Isn't nature incredible?
We were watching some movie, I think. Yeah, we were watching some movie.
Oh, you were right. Yeah.
I don't even remember, right? And then we just pulled out of the living room and it's like, this is so much better than that movie we were watching. This is insane.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah, that's like the best way to experience it. I think you're just, visiting somewhere, having a fairly normal life, and then you're out.
Yeah, we got really lucky. It's like, I think it's one of those things I've always been sort of hoping to see especially when I've been farther up, farther from the equator, I suppose. But that night, it all came together. It was super lucky. And I'll say, like, if you ever talk to somebody and they're like, I think I've seen the Northern Lights, they totally haven't. You will know. 1,000% know if you've seen the Northern Lights. There's no mistaking what you're seeing.
Seems completely surreal to me. Imagine you're at a mate's place and then you called outside and there are the Northern Lights. It definitely can't happen down here. Now, my final guest today is Tobi Barth, and he is a German who's moved to Canada and got so obsessed with the Northern Lights, he now runs a tour company in the Yukon. So he has not seen them just once or twice. He has seen the Northern Lights, a countless number of times. And it was really fascinating to hear how he works with the Northern Lights.
Yeah, so when we thought about the products available here in the Yukon, in the northwest Canada, we thought, okay, we need something more exciting. We need something people want to experience. People want to have adventure, but it should be still safe. And what is the benefit, we thought, of doing the aurora viewing, the Northern Lights viewing differently was, okay, we have to travel around. We have to drive around at night, and we try to find the best spots around town, around town is pretty far, actually. We are driving up to 200 kilometers a night if necessary.
Wow.
So the idea was, how can we increase the chance for aurora, for a Northern Light sighting? And the only way was to have this aurora hunting or aurora chasing tour. So
cool.
What we're doing basically is we're picking the people up from the hotel, and then we drive in one or the other direction. So since we have a couple of interesting cameras and a little bit knowledge about the weather, We know pretty much in the evening in which direction we go in general. So if we go more towards the northwest or more to the southeast, and as soon as we make this decision, we try to find a spot where we see the lights, where we see the northern lights the best. So that means northern lights are extremely depend extremely on the weather. If we have clouds, or if it's fully covered, you most likely don't see them.
Right.
But the weather here in the Yukon is so fast changing, and it's like really hard to predict. That we have so many times we had the experience that even if it's snowing in town, you could see it outside of town.
That makes it tricky.
Oh, exactly. But not, we don't have to drive only 20 kilometers. We have to go probably 50 kilometers to the west, for example. And then sometimes we find this spot, we find this open spot, seeing the clear sky, and then we are lucky to see the lights as well. So what we are doing, basically, we're driving to at least 3 to 4 locations per night. And we have one specific spot. I don't know why, but this spot is not always, but most of the time we have a really good view there. So that means less clouds, less snow, really open area. So that means we have a really wide open area. We don't have anything which is kind of blocking the view, such as forest or mountains, right? Yeah. And we are pretty lucky at this location. And most of the time, when we decide to go to this location, we are pretty good and pretty successful.
Right.
So we did a test last winter before the virus and the pandemic hit the world. We basically wrote down every day how much we drove and how often we saw the northern lights. And at the end, we compared that to the numbers of all the other companies who only offer aurora viewing at one designated location. And at the end, and that was really surprising us as well, we had a 26% higher success rate in seeing the aurora.
Wow, that's significant.
That is significant. And the interesting thing is people notice the product is somehow available in other locations, not here in the Yukon, but I heard that's available in some of the northern European countries. And so people who are or who doing research where they can see the lights and what's the best way to see it, they inquire especially for this tour. And that's interesting because those numbers are interesting, or those numbers went up increased the last years.
Right. Yeah.
So more people are specifically looking for the aurora hunting or aurora chasing or northern light chasing, northern lights hunting, whatever they want to name it. And that makes us really confident in the decision we made a couple of years ago that we go for the hunting and provide a totally different experience. The other big advantage of doing this hunting is that people see a real northern night, winter night. So you see a lot at night. When we are in the van or in the car, we have a really bright light. And what happens is that once in a while, animals are crossing the road, for example, caribous or a moose or lynx. That is really interesting because you won't see that when you go to one specific location.
Yeah.
And people have way more adventurous tour when they join one of these hunting tours. And we had quite a lot of people booking 1, 2, 3 nights. And when they join us for multiple days and they see the difference, they say, "Oh wow, that was totally different. We didn't went there yesterday." No, we didn't.
Perfect.
Because we always decide basically just before the tour starts where we go for, or where we most likely go. You never know, the weather can change.
Yeah.
Within seconds sometimes. But this makes it really, really interesting and unique.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I have one more question for you. So when you're out there with tourists who might be seeing the Northern Lights for the first time, and I think for them it's crazy exciting, but what about for people like you who've seen them, I don't know, hundreds of times? Is it still exciting?
It is. It certainly is. It is even that exciting that when, for example, now this time during this pandemic, currently we don't have any tourists here. We don't have this great situation that you have in Australia. We have a lockdown and there's no tourists right now. There are no tours running at all. But even if we have now a forecast for a really intense solar storm, means strong aurora, strong northern lights, then I still go out at night and try to get some good shots for the website or for marketing purpose. I'm so excited. I want to go out and want to see it.
Wow.
And a little thing, and my wife is super happy about that. Our bedroom is facing north, so the bedroom window is facing north. And if there is a good forecast for the northern lights, we don't close the curtains.
Oh.
And when we go to bed, then most of the time, when there is a storm and clear skies, of course, we see the northern lights. We see the aurora from our bed.
Now, I can vouch for that because Tobi actually sent me a photo taken from his bed looking out their bedroom window. Amazing, because that was just a window full of the northern lights. Absolutely amazing. So I hope you have enjoyed listening to these tales of seeing the northern lights. I think it's just given me more lust and more extreme need to go travelling again because it's something I've never experienced and would really like to. But hopefully it's also been a bit entertaining and lighthearted because it is the end of a very tricky year, isn't it? So I hope that anyone out there who is celebrating Christmas does so with as much fun as possible. I know lots of people will be in various kinds of lockdown and restrictions for this Christmas, and I hope that I never have to say that again. And I hope that future Christmases are full of travel. Anyway, a huge thank you to my fabulous guests in episode 219. I started out chatting with Justin Meneguzzi, and you can find more about his writing at justinmeneguzzi.com. I next chatted with Karen Emanuel, and she is actually the owner of Jicaro Lodge in Nicaragua, and you can find out more about that at jicarolodge.com. And in a future episode, you will hear the story of how she came to just randomly buy an island one day. It's a good story. Next, I chatted with Travis King. You can find him at traviswking.com. He's got a memoir out called Not That Anyone Asked, a travel memoir about sex, drugs, love, and finding purpose. That's my favourite bit. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Tobi Barth of Epic North in the Yukon, and you can find more about his work and tours at epic-north.com. Of course, come and join the Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers. There's a link in the show notes, and the show notes for this episode are at notaballerina.com/219. Thank you, as always, very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.